Welcome to our October Blue Marble Evaluation Community Gathering. My name is Charmaine Campbell-Patton and joined by Michael. You want to say good morning?
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
And got some familiar names and some new names, so we're happy that you're all here with us. And we keep these relatively informal, these gatherings, trying to support building a community of folks who are working on Blue Marble evaluation in whatever capacity, integrating it into work they're doing, into projects, or just, beginning to think about Blue Marble and how to apply the principles. And today we thought we would make space to reflect on the ways in which there were connections between Blue Marble evaluation and culturally responsive evaluation from the CREA conference that took place 2 weeks ago now in Illinois, here in the US, and then the American Evaluation Association conference, which took place last week in Indianapolis. And I know at least Nicole Bowman is here joining my phone and will come on camera when she gets to her office to talk about CREA. But because she's still en route, I thought maybe we could start with the AEA conference and just talk a little bit about. We had a session there that we kind of piloted in this group last month, but wanting to reflect a little bit about that and as well as what other themes we heard from AEA. And so maybe I'll start passing it to Michael to share a little bit about what reflections you have from AEA and implications for Blue Marble. And then we can open it up to others who might have been there. Does that sound good?
All right. People took the theme very seriously. So the notion of story ran through the sessions, and the ways in which stories about programs, stories about participants, and stories about evaluation. Blue Marble evaluation is partly a story about the field of evaluation over the last 50 years and how the scope and nature of evaluation is changing, with issues of sustainability and equity coming to the fore. And so that was part of the session that we did. The thing that most impressed me, in addition to the many layers of story that people shared and were using, was how rapidly AI, artificial intelligence, is infusing evaluation. There were a number of sessions about AI, people using AI, worried about AI, exploring AI, and the ways in which it both has to be fact-checked because it can get stuff wrong, but also the way in which it is expanding the capability of gathering synthesis information, doing literature reviews, and also adding other perspectives to the work, so that one of the things that is often not done as well as it could be is to include in an evaluation report alternative interpretations of the findings or alternative ways of looking at things. And AI is offering a way of doing that systematically. It's often hard to even think about alternative interpretations sometimes for findings. And so to have that mechanism available to generate other views or other sources was one of the ways that I thought it was useful. But there was also a lot of caution that it makes a big difference what questions you ask of AI, how you ask the questions, what dialogue you engage in. And so there's a big learning curve that we're going to be going through here as AI further develops very rapidly, how it affects evaluation, everything from generating designs to analyzing data and then reporting findings. Those are some of the things that stood out to me. What stood out to you, Charmaine?
I think that, one of the things that people are still wrestling with from my perspective is this idea of being able to integrate the local and the global. I attended a session around that was sponsored by the International Working Group that was talking about localization and sort of the trend towards localization. Really, I think my sense, and Nikki can comment on this maybe later, is sort of this idea of really making sure that evaluations are culturally responsive, particularly when done in the international sphere, that there has been a lot of top-down approaches. And that this idea of localization is really important, but that there isn't still much talk about global particularly in like the American Evaluation Association. I feel like we're seeing that in other spaces, but this idea of integrating global and local, they were talking about international versus local, but there wasn't a lot of talk about how to integrate those things. And I think there's still sort of a perspective that it's either or, that you're either doing like a very local community driven evaluation, or you're doing sort of a top down donor funded international evaluation. And there still, I think, is some challenge to how to integrate those two things. And particularly when we talk about the power of story with this year's theme, really, I think that was really focusing on particularly local voices and how to bring the story of what's happening in specific contexts, but less about what that global story is. How do we extrapolate up from all of the different local stories to get a picture of what's happening across contexts? I still found that to be missing. And I think that when we looked at some of the feedback from our session, and Mike is on, I know, who helped co-facilitate that session with us, people were still really struggling with, how do I do this? It still feels too abstract. And so I think for us as a community, really trying to come up with more concrete examples of how folks can use stories at the local level and extrapolate up. One of the things we did with the Food System Summit a few years ago that some folks may have heard us talk about is to try to bring folks who had done sessions, facilitated dialogues in their local communities around food and sustainability and food systems, bring them together to try to think about what themes there were across different groups: women, smallholder farmers, youth, indigenous peoples, and try to do some of that local to global work. But I'm not seeing that still being done. I think there's just still a big barrier to try to figure out how to do that in certain contexts, especially when it's not being explicitly called for, how to push for that. Is there anyone else who was at AEA that wants to share things that they heard or questions that they had about what they heard from AEA?
I would personally like to know what people thought of Michael's session.
Yeah, anyone else? So Michael did a session on Friday midday that was 50 years of evaluation through song and fable. How many songs did you do? About 10 or so? Yeah. It will be recorded, so we'll try to share that in some way. You want to say anything about your reflections on that, Michael? You're muted.
I'm interested in how it came across online. Nikki, you apparently watched it. What was it like online?
Oh, I really loved it. But I'm always down for music and evaluation. I thought it came through very well. I wish I could have heard the audience a bit more, but I think that, you weave together really well, not only important tidbits in the history, obviously your positionality and perspective that you bring, and the power of, honestly, the fine arts being injected more into the work that we do. So I thought it motivated me far beyond my frontal lobes.
Oh, nice.
We got
Yeah,
a lot
I
of
also
feedback
could
that
not
it
hear
was,
the audience. I was up on a stage in the big auditorium and the sound was lost in the ceiling. So I wondered if the audience came across online at all. It was dark, so they didn't show the audience much.
yeah,
But
it was hard, but I do think people were singing along, being in the audience. It was just the music was so loud. In some ways that allowed them to sing along without being worried about being heard. But it was harder to hear folks. But I did hear a lot of people say it was the first time they'd cried at a professional conference because there were definitely some tears. It was emotional.
yeah.
Well, sounds like a number of other folks weren't able to be there. So we'll try to share the recording of that session, and also we're going to be using some of the things we gathered at our your Blue Marble story session to frame some of the work that we'll be doing as a community together. We haven't had a chance to dig into those too deeply yet, but to think about what folks feel like they need to be able to do more with Blue Marble evaluation. But Nikki, now that you're on, do you want to share a little bit about CREA?
I do. Sorry. We
You're
have dogs.
good. Take your time.
We have dogs at the office, so I'm like, there's so many. I never have trouble getting to work. I live in a small town. Anyways, yes, I have some stuff to share. I'm sorry for my panting rant here going on. But I think I actually saw connections pretty well between, I didn't go to AEA, and I had to pick between AEA and CREA this year, which I don't think I've missed an AEA meeting in decades, maybe. But the last conversation I had with Stafford was, I asked him when we were at AEA in New Orleans, I'm like, why are they so close together? And he kind of gave me that side-eye elder look and said, yeah, CREA was set up first. So I took that as you have to be at CREA. And so sort of following up, Charmaine, with your comment about people that have never cried at AEA like they did. I really think we should be thankful for the elders that we have in our community. And I'm Stockbridge Muncie, sorry. And I practice, I don't just put the flag up here. With my culture and language, I practice very much and try to put it into my evaluation work. But I really found that the storytelling is something that we have done, and are probably a big reason why we are still alive, because there's oral knowledge and oral history in there. And I really love the idea of storytelling because, there's so many things that we have in common, and I don't think we get to tell enough story. I think that the emotional part of our being, so physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, our conferences give us a lot of the mental part of it, right? But we don't find spirituality, mental as in emotional, and I don't know, physical. Michael was dancing around the stage. But we did storytelling and music when we had a talking circle at CREA. And a talking circle, and it was I guess it was closer to traditional than being an academic talking circle, and I do both. But we had two elders that guided us through this, Melvin Hall and Carolee Dodge Francis, and there were probably close to 200 people in the room. Some people sat outside the circle. It was in a big ballroom, and some people, we had chairs, and we passed the microphone, and I have a traditional talking stick that we pass around, and we just listen to each other, reflect on Stafford and the impact he's had. And I think the one thing that I learned is it's about a movement. And so I think that, BME is about a movement, just like CREA is about a movement. It's bigger than one person, right? There's got to be a person that is, that is the founder of these organizations or these movements, but when it truly becomes a community like BME and Kriya, like it's a movement. You care for one another. I think that we need to pause and have more of the happy tears or whatever it is. Just pause instead of being in such a hurry for what's the next publication or who's the next hot person or the next hot topic. I really like that we get to sit in song and be entertained and inspired by Michael. And he's not paying me to endorse him, and I'm not his hype man or whatever you want to say. I don't know what you call these conference organizers, or when you have a concert organizer. And same thing for Stafford. And just really thinking, how are we embodying as a community the movement of BME or the movement of Kriya in the way that we live our lives and in the work that we do. And I've said for years, AEA needs to have an in memoriam. I think I get inspired by, I don't know if the Grammys or who does that, but I really think that that's something that I would like to see in my lifetime with all the extra time that I have. But I, would like to be part of something like that, because we don't know if Michael didn't tell us stories about from Michael Scriven to Stafford Hood to whatever, like his reflections are like that's an elder oral historian that may not be with us forever. You know what I'm saying? In spirit, yes. So I think that's one. And I know, Charmaine, when I was asked to sort of draw connections, like I have to tell you that I went to two conferences this year, one in Boston right before Kriya, and most of it was reconnecting with human beings, and it was different than, thank God the pandemic is over and we're reconnecting. It was just going, wow, the work that we do matters. People are noticing, sometimes when you hear people reflect about Stafford, or when you hear Michael is reflecting about different scholars that we have, even sometimes privately when he says things to me, well, Nikki, you're a storyteller, or he'll say something, Leah Neubauer, different ones, you don't realize the impact that you have on people, and I think that we're lucky to I get to be part of the Kriya movement. And I feel part of the BME movement. Like there's real community, and that's no shade on AEA. It just means that there are real humans connecting about real things that matter. The fact that Michael is thinking about his grandchildren and way beyond that is 7 generations thinking for me. So I think we're much more alike than we're different. And I'm not trying to be on a kumbaya, thing this morning. I guess a little bit. I don't mind doing it, but that's what I think I took away. And it was real hard for me not to be at AEA with storytelling, because I love a good story. I love listening, especially if it's over wine and good food. I like doing that too. So
We ought to, Nikki, back
Yeah.
up with some of the international participants who won't know what Kriya is or who Stafford is.
Sure.
We're referring to it like everybody knows what it is. So maybe share some of the history of the creation of Kriya, and even culturally responsive evaluation and Stafford's role in that.
Yeah. Oh man. I hope that I think they're going to make public, and when they do, I'll make sure to share them. Thank you, Charmaine, for sharing that. The Culturally Responsive Evaluation and Assessment Center is at the University of Urbana, Illinois. That's where it started. We've had 7 conferences now. The word culturally responsive evaluation, CRE, was coined by Dr. Stafford Hood. And I think his first publication on that was sometime in the early to mid 80s. Anyways, part of his earlier work, and it continued, was Nobody Knows My Name, because he would look in the literature and not see the contributions of African-American evaluators. And so he encourages people like myself, who are the Native evaluators, Hispanic, LGBTQ, who are those people? How do we understand our history? Where is that? How do we bring it forward? So it's something that we can teach, non-Indigenous or non-African American, you know what I'm saying? And not only from the contributions, but the way that we learn, the theories, the methods, and how we do our work. So that kind of became a hub. Kriya kind of became a hub. I call it the civil rights movement within AEA, or in VOPEs, I guess. I don't know if that's right. That's just the way I say it. There also is a Kriya Hawaii and a Kriya Ireland. So we have a very international draw, and it's very strong. All races, creeds, orientation, age, whatever is welcome there. And I hope that there were two really, they hired a professional like video group that put together pictures and music and video vignettes were asked to give. And there were a lot of people that had like the stories that were told and pieced together was amazing. They even had a reflection room that you could go into, you know, and it was all pictures of Stafford through the years. Even a little Stafford, I'll have to send that out. A little Stafford with his little, he had little flat white bottom shoes on and little bibs. He probably was, I want to say 4 or 5 years old with his mom and dad, and they told that story all the way. But you know, I think that one way we honor people is by talking story and by doing some of the things and being able to move that forward. And if you're not part of a community and where you have real authentic relationships, we're not going to be able to, you know, have those stories continue. It's like a recipe that moves through time. It's timeless, you know, and it's a way to keep the spirit and the movement of the spirit alive. So I'm sorry for buzzing right by Kriya. Thanks, Michael, for that pause.
And the story of our profession, which was part of what I was trying to capture, and just only had time to do a little bit of it, is a story of people reacting against a particular perspective and saying, but you've left out this, and adding that to the story. So culturally responsive evaluation emerged as a reaction to responsive evaluation, which had been put forth by Bob Stake, one of the founding thought leaders at the University of Illinois. And responsive evaluation was the notion that was a reaction in Bob's part against evaluators determining what the evaluation questions were. So in the beginning, most evaluation researchers were commissioned to do the evaluation, and they determined what the evaluation would be. What Bob Stake contributed was, well, let's check in with the program people and the staff and the participants and see what their questions are. But Bob was not a participatory evaluator. He did not engage people in the evaluation. He only went as far as saying, let me engage them by providing input into the questions. He still determined then what the questions were and synthesized that, but he did not involve them in that. Stafford at Illinois, at a session in honor of Bob Stake's contributions, gave this paper on culturally responsive evaluation, saying that it wasn't enough just to go and ask people what they might like to see the questions to be, that you have to do that in a way that connects with who they are, what their culture is, and that to have somebody ask questions when you don't understand their framework, their culture, their perspective, won't give you really deep and appropriate questions. And his perspective was influenced by a movie at that time, Amistad, about a slave ship that sank and was captured, and the fact that there was nobody in the court system that could speak the language of the slaves from Africa, and that couldn't really represent their perspective on who they were. And so culturally responsive evaluation was a reaction against the narrowness of responsive evaluation, making it much more embedded, not just in individual perspectives, but in a community perspective, in a cultural perspective. And part of where Blue Marble evaluation picks up on that we're in this movement around this is where what Charmaine was talking about, the connection between the local and the global, or specific, particular place-based and time-based cultures, and the emergent notion of a global sense of our shared humanity. One doesn't substitute for the other. They are yin-yang, in the sense that having a particular culture helps us appreciate the global culture, and the global sense of humanity helps us appreciate particular cultures. But Blue Marble, in a sense, is part of the evolution of the story, to add to particular cultures our shared humanity, both in its origins and in some of the issues we face going forward. And so what we often lose is that evolution of thinking and being, because people are typically involved in one of these perspectives when they're doing their work, but they have affected each other. And very much Blue Marble evaluation has emerged out of the need to both appreciate place and history and culture, but to understand we have some shared challenges as humanity, which we're very much experiencing these days, both on the conflict side and the climate side and the health side and all of those things. So evaluation itself is an evolving story that we're all part of.
And I'd like to say, in the spirit of self-reflection and I like to be a critical pragmatist. I don't know if that's the right word to use for myself. There's lots of words, but in a world that's so fast, including our profession, I really like reflecting on history, and I like slowing down. And I don't know if that's because I'm in my 50s now or what the scoop is, but there's something, if you look up at white supremacy culture in organizations or whatever, there's an article that goes with it, but there's like the top 10, because you have to have top 10, like Jimmy Kimmel or whoever has top 10s. And one of them is this rush, just everything is hurry up, deadline. That's part of the production Western modality. And I find that whether it's Michael's flavor of, reflection in YouTube videos or doing songs and making those connections, or storytelling in the way that my community does it, there's something about slowing down and going, it's okay. It may have a little, if you're rooted and you're sort of, plants I don't eat plants that are engineered that grow fast. I want them to grow as fast as the sun and the rain and the earth and the instructions inside of that seed spirit say they're supposed to move. So in the same way, I'm trying to be like that seed, or part of my plant relatives or my earth nature relatives, my non-human relatives, is how do I slow down? Because it seems like the older you get, the faster time goes. And I'm healthy, this isn't my swan song here or anything like that. At least I plan to live to at least 100. I have a lot of shit to stir up, I got a lot more work to do. But I think that in the spirit of the industrial age of academia, I want to do the opposite. I want to slow down. And I find that the more things change, the more things stay the same. I find nuggets, and even, I really relish having, the stories that were shared with me in the teachings, in ceremonies, or just taking an elder pumpkin patch picking, or whatever it is, that I find that those nuggets of wisdom, that's why they're called traditional knowledge. They stay and they're there. If you find a seed that's 900 years old, it still knows how to grow. I have some of those great grandbabies right here. This is tobacco growing in my window right here. They got my back. The plants got my back. So I guess what I'm just asking us this morning to do is, as we're changing seasons, right, letting go of some stuff, and some of that stuff for me is letting go of the fast-paced nature, because I really feel grateful that Michael takes the time to do the stories and the songs that he does. And there are other elder storytellers, Melvin Hall is one of them. If you listen, they have a certain gravitas, or a certain, you can close your eyes and you feel that energy. You go beyond your eyes and your frontal lobes, and your heart feels and your spirit feels, right? And those are the things that feed my spirit, and keep me going. So that's your pep talk for today, people.
Well, it reminds me, another highlight for me that was actually right before Michael's session was the award ceremony, which had just been brought back this year for the first time in a few years. And were you watching, Nikki? Was that, I don't know if that was live
I
stream
was
or
just
not.
going to type in the
Yeah.
thing, Hazel MF,
Hazel.
and she would
Yeah.
if I said MF too, so that I won't say it.
Yeah, Hazel Simona had an amazing acceptance speech, and they let her go on, which was completely what appropriate, and she just shared so much wisdom, and people, if they weren't in Michael's session and they were in that session, they were already crying anyways, probably from that, and it definitely brought that some of the stories of how to disrupt the system and how, oh, you have it, Michael? Or what are you sharing?
I'm just sharing.
Oh,
Hey,
there we go. Yeah.
they didn't record that session.
Oh, they didn't. Okay. That's too bad. That's a loss.
And Hazel has not been, I work with Hazel. I don't just have my business. I work for UW-Madison and we work together.
Oh.
She hasn't been well for a long time and at work. And so she made the pilgrimage to Kriya and to AEA, and so we're, like I said, we're not going to have our elders. She's another oral historian forever, and so we just really need to slow down and take the time to listen, and you'll get what you need. You'll be fed.
One of the themes running through her acceptance was the admonition to proceed until apprehended, which was sort of her story of constantly having to challenge barriers, facing barriers as an African-American woman, as an evaluator. And she kept saying that she just had to always proceed until apprehended. And then when apprehended, make up whatever story you could until you could proceed again. And then proceed until apprehended. And that was part of her health story, was that the health had apprehended her, but she was fighting back against it, and was still with us. She described being in a virtual coma for almost 2 months before being able to come back, and so it was good to see her get that recognition.
And I think it's a good reminder too, because in our session, there were a lot of people that were just like, I still don't get it. I still don't really know how to do this blue marble thing. And part of it is not waiting to be asked to do blue marble, but doing it, in ways that are creative, that are taking something that you are being asked to do at a very local level, and ensuring that there is some reflection on the patterns at the global level. And, it is a little bit of, there's a theme of coloring outside the lines too, with Emily Gates's speech. And then again, Hazel's, like, this is what part of what this community is figuring out how to shift the way that things are done and do things a little differently. And sometimes that takes courage, and it takes community to help troubleshoot when that, feels hard, and how we can support that in whatever way that looks like. And folks at Kriya have been doing that for a lot longer and trying to really change the dominant narrative about how these things are done. So just another layer on that. Anything else, Michael or Nikki, you want to add?
Not much for me. Just, I see Bev is there. I don't know. I'm sorry, Bev. There I am calling out. She's in the middle of the move, Keiko. I don't know who else might have been at Kriya and or AEA that may have reflections.
Yeah, if you were there or not there and want to chime in with questions or comments, you're welcome, on or off camera. It's early for some folks, but
I honestly, depending on what folks need here, what they want to add to in the spirit of conferencing. Oh, Keiko's coming on. Good. Before we hang up today, or I don't even know what to call it. Where's my rotary dial phone, people? Would like to talk about, and Michael might know more about this, about EES and some things coming up. And I know that we're going to be talking about our decolonization journal in, I want to say November, mid-November, but I'd like to just highlight if there's anything. I don't have any more travel this year. I'm super excited about that. So I might be getting my Christmas tree up early. But if there's anything else going on, it would be great to sort of highlight at the end as we, sort of wrap a little bit today.
Yeah, I've been trying, pass the cake in a second, but I've been trying to pull together an overview of like what are the conferences coming up in the next year that we should be aware of, that folks in various parts of the world may or may not be attending, and what themes they are. So I have a working list here that I would love for folks to add to, and a column for folks who are interested in doing something around BME there, so that we can just crowdsource, get more, Michael can't be everywhere, Nikki can't be everywhere, like folks who are interested in connecting at different in-person or virtual things. And I'm missing a ton from this, I know, so please add or update, but just wanted to put that out there. But yeah, Keiko, hi. Wanna add
Hi,
anything?
I didn't get the opportunity to go to KRIA or AAA this year. I had my family's health issues and my own health issues, but I was thinking about Hazel too, and actually I just realized the other day that my granddaughter's also Hazel. Just want to say that it's not just about ourselves, but we are really part of this hopefully a grand history of people who are totally connected and can reflect on how we are contributing to this Blue Marble, really. I came back. I'm sorry I didn't catch the first half of this session today. My building was in a fire drill session, so we were out on the street, so this is what happens. But yes, one word that came to me in the last week or so was de-imperialize. Yeah. So it's not decolonization. I think that the system itself has to de-imperialize. So I was also looking at a special about the British Museum made by the Japanese. And I was just getting angry every second of it showing things. So anyways, there's a lot of things out there. So that's it for me. And good to see you all.
Thanks, Keiko. Hey, Beverly, anything you want to add?
Well, I did have a couple of comments. I really loved all this conversation that's been going on, and all of the things I think are just so important. What have been mentioned. So the thing I just wanted to add is one more thing about, and maybe it's as a story, and it picks up on, well, two things actually that Nikki mentioned. One, she touched on our relatives of nature. And I was at a session where we were talking about the importance of protecting our legacy forests here in the Northwest. And one of the things that came up was a lot of discussion about we're not owners of nature, we are stewards of nature. And a native elder who was there said, well, yes, that's true, but actually the trees are stewards of us. And it just really is so important that I think we're still talking so much about the human connections and getting that right. I just want to keep bringing in the importance of how we connect to nature, and especially as we get into local situations. So like here, this local situation of the importance of trees in our particular county area is just overwhelmingly important for the future of all life. And it's also the Pacific Northwest forests that run from California on up to Alaska have more capacity for the protection of our environment than even the Amazon. And I don't know, I can never remember all the details of that, but it is such an important thing that people don't really realize. And so I just wanted to bring that in. The other thing that Nikki said that I wanted to reflect on was the business of moving more slowly and keeping in touch with nature. And I remember the story of a surgeon who was training, a new intern, and they were talking about connecting arteries. And the surgeon said, you only have 1 minute to connect those arteries, so do it very slowly. And I just think that that whole issue of the how we think about speed and what it means is important to emphasize and reinforce from what was already talked about.
Thank you so much, Bev.
I did a session yesterday for the first conference of the Latvian Evaluation Society. And in preparing for that and talking with them and learning some about Latvia and wanting to be culturally responsive, it turns out that especially at this time of year, the great passion of people in Latvia is mushroom hunting. And the part of what's emerging along the lines of what Beverly was talking about is that fungi are one of the ways that trees communicate with each other in the ecosystems. And so in the Latvian presentation, I referred to, and let me share screen here for a moment. I think I've got. Been reading this book called Entangled Life, How Fungi Make Our Worlds Change Our Minds and Shape Our Futures. And about the nature of fungal networks, how they communicate. And this book, Entangled Life, very much takes the perspective that Beverly was just sharing, that from a non-human point of view, we are the objects of fungal activity, that they the opening of the book says fungi are everywhere, but they're easy to miss. They're inside you and around you. They sustain you and all that you depend on. The fungi are changing the way that life happens, as they have done for more than 1 billion years. They are eating rock, making soil, digesting pollutants, nourishing and killing plants, surviving in space, inducing visions, producing food, making medicines, manipulating animal behavior, and influencing the composition of the Earth's atmosphere. Fungi provide a key to understanding the planet on which we live and the ways that we think, feel, and behave. And so in the session there, we looked at lessons for governance, which was their theme for mushroom hunting, and ways in which understanding the ecosystem of the mushroom and the interconnections of humans and mushrooms would give insights into the connection between humans and nature and some of the challenges we face, and ended with it turns out that one of the largest festivals in the world is there. And so in thinking about human organisms and how we organize, this is a scene from the closing of this year's August Latvian festival, which provides lots of fodder for thinking about the nature of patterns, and suggested looking at So that full video is on YouTube, but it's another way of engaging around what we mean by patterns and interactions, and connected the dancing in the festival to mushroom hunting.
And I think as we transition, like through seasons, like Michael, stuff you say makes me think about, I'm like, oh yeah, why didn't I share that? We do a lot of cleansing and fasting and different things with the change of the seasons. You know, to Bev's point too, about how do we not only locally consider this, but how do she talked about humility. I don't know if that, you know, right, with that, we don't know everything as humans, and we're effing stuff up. You know what I'm saying? That's the reflection on me, not this glamorous and classy BME. You know how Nikki Bowman is with my rough talk sometimes. But in the storytelling frame, AEA did it this year, but as we go into wintertime is a time for us telling stories. You had to hunker down, you know, because the weather was, you know, the weather gets a little more rough depending on where you live. And we shared a lot of stories. It could be, and so I find that in my personal life, as well as my professional life, that we slow down and talk more story. Even my body's waking up. That's what I told Charmaine when I was talking to her, texting her this morning. I said, the sun in the nighttime is telling me to stay in bed longer and to leave work sooner. You know, I'm very much attuned to the day and the night cycles. And so I try to learn from Kishok and Kishalamokwe, you know, the Alongwe, the sky world, and the creator about this. And so as we go into, if you're in a global north, or if you're in a spot where you're changing seasons in the wintertime, that's what we're going into, because I'm in Wisconsin, by the Great Lakes, in the United States, Turtle Island, we would say. The heart of Turtle Island is the Great Lakes. That's another teaching for another BME session. But tell your stories. You know, you're remembering people who aren't around for whatever holidays you may celebrate, which could be solstice, celebrating nature. And I don't know if you're sharing recipes, or some people are in my community are doing a lot more sewing, and they're talking story as they're, you know, canning and putting things away, you know, that they can eat all winter. I know that we are finishing up fishing for us. People ice fish, but you know, and there's fish stories that we share, and then we thank the fish relatives or the things that we've during this warm harvest season that we have, that we're now going to have as we go into the fall and winter season. So stories are all around us, and the slowing down and thinking about what if we didn't have a book? What if we didn't have books and we didn't have BME, you know, in this webinar? Like, where else could we learn from? What else might inspire us? You know, so just how blessed we are that we do have Zoom, you know, and books, but also taking the time for the things that are free to you and that are out there, and that we have to be the voice to protect our fungi. I don't know, spiders and fungi, Michael, and snakes, they're distant relatives. I'll protect the berries and the plants and the water. I'm a little nervous about fungi and snakes.
Nikki referred to a edition of the journal Multidisciplinary Evaluation on Decolonization that she co-edited, and she has in the chapter that she contributed to, has an image that she helped create, that we had an interview about, and it's at the end of the videotape I did on decolonization, which most people don't get that far in these long videos. So I've pulled it out, and today I'm going to post that interview by itself with Nikki online so that more people get to it. And I want to show you the image to whet your appetite for this interview. This is a image that Nikki created. It's her image with an artist, and her discussion of what it means and how she came to it, and why it's important to her is both in the journal in a brief version, but on the YouTube, she's able to discuss it at length. And so you can look for that later today as a 15-minute discussion with Nikki about how this represents her experience and the threads that come both in the hair and in the garment and in the image. Very, very powerful, Nikki.
And it came from sleeping. The power of rest, the power of a nap, and the power of slowing down. It takes a while. I have and I won't go into it because you'll hear me talk about it, but I literally have a Nikki's sketchbook. And when what things start out as are kind of crazy looking, you know what I'm saying? And then what they end up as, you know, with a digital artist, get your crayons out, have a sketchbook by your place, have a little, I call it my dog kennel, but it's a meditation room. You know how dogs would like to go in a kennel when it's too much. Get in there. And I find out the more that I rest and I meditate, the more access I have to my subconscious. And so that picture that you're seeing needed to come out, but it literally took years because I think we're also sleep deprived, or our minds are like going 100 miles an hour, you know, because we're wired that way, or because there's so much to do and a sense of urgency. So thanks, Michael, for pulling that out. That was really nice of you.
Well, such a rich conversation. Beverly, did you want to add anything? You back on camera or just saying hi?
No, just here.
Anyone else? Mike, I saw you on camera for a minute. Anyone else want to add any? Katie? Yeah. Hi.
Hi, Nikki. Hi, Michael. Hi, Charmaine. I was at AEA, and I will also just express that I was like ashamed to be crying in our session on the principles based Blue Marble evaluation and developmental evaluation work. I felt it so strongly, and it opened up this part in me that just like recognized like the beauty and power of this work in community and in relationship, and that humanity piece that you're talking about, and that connection between the local and the global. I feel like the stories are the pathways that help us find each other in this work. And without these stories being shared and some of that lineage wisdom that like our elders hold in this work, like I know for me, Michael, it was the first time I had that much time with you in a physical space. And I just kept thinking to myself, like, how many stories are you holding that have been like helping to create this scaffolding for the field that I'm a part of and stepping into? And so much of the work that I'm here and connected to is really exploring, and this was also like a theme I heard throughout different AEA conversations, is like, how do we really work with place? There was a conversation that some participants shared in their work in Chicago, and it was a very specific place-based approach that they were taking to really kind of operationalizing context. And I think one of the things that I feel like we have an opportunity to explore that Blue Marble evaluation really opens a door for is getting context out of our heads and into our hearts and our communities and our places that we're working in. And it kind of sheds the kind of man-made lines and boundaries of what we think of when we think of a city, or when we think of a county, or we think of a state. But to really think about things in bioregions, and think about things in watersheds, and think about things in like what our role and work is in connection in relation to not just the human, but also the non-human relations that inhabit this place that we call home. And so just lots of swirlings, and thanks for getting the tears out. I think it was the Hallelujah song that gets me every time. So I just wanted to share and reflect that back.
Thank you so much, Katie. So glad that you were able to be there, and great to hear your reflection. Mike, did you want to add anything?
I was just kind of inspired by this topic and coming back to the idea of what's next for Blue Marble as a network. Is it maybe one thing to think about as new sessions are developed, that we do kind of embrace both the value of coming together and listening to each other, but maybe also kind of some of the validity in people's feedback in the network session, that people want more advice. Is there maybe a place that we say, hey, we're going to convene people and invite you to bring your projects, and let's go ahead and have that. have that chance to talk more and really give you something for your project, if that's what people really are looking for, if that kind of discussion would be helpful.
Yeah, we talked about doing that more this year and maybe we haven't made the call as explicit, haven't had very many people step forward to offer their projects as examples. And maybe that's because they're, not feeling like they're at a place where that could happen. But I agree. I think that that would be really powerful, and maybe we need to do some more direct outreach to folks to actually invite that, rather than having it be an opt-in kind of thing. But, yes, I agree. People are hungry for both the conceptual space, but also that practical, so what does this look like in my day to day? Still trying to get there, I think. Thank you, Keiko, for those words. I will say on my end, I put this conference list together, but I'm also thinking about this cross silos principle and this idea of what other spaces, we're in the evaluation space, but what other spaces can we and should we be in to cross pollinate? And I will be presenting this afternoon at the National Humanities Center, or the National Humanities Conference, which is actually, the in-person conference is next week in the exact same hotel the AEA was in, 2 weeks apart. The virtual conference is this week. And I was supposed to present with the same people at AEA and the Humanities Conference. They are part of the Minnesota Humanities Center, and we've been doing some work around using narrative evaluation and story circles to gather information about systems change in the education system and try to connect the stories to the bigger picture of systems change. And so I'll be presenting today at that conference to try to help, crack open the idea of what evaluation is in a different community, to think about, the intersection of stories and systems and evaluation and narrative. I'll play closer to fine for them and, show some alternative ways of thinking about evaluation, because I think that there's definitely work to be done within our field, but also outside of our field to change the narrative about what evaluation is and can be more broadly. So if there are other spaces like that where you feel like we should be showing up, you can add those to the list that I shared as well. And we can't be everywhere. Conferences are only one medium, obviously, but they are, they are opportunities to start these dialogues, as we saw, in powerful ways to be in person. So, Michael, do you want to say any final words?
Just wishing everyone well at this difficult time, and the awareness that Nikki brought to us about the change in the seasons. It's very palpable at this time of year, the dynamics of our world, whether in north or south, wherever you are. And that's a piece of our transition. And thank all of you for sharing and for being a part of this community and movement.
Thank you. Nikki, any final words for us?
Get out in nature, enjoy it, even if it's raining.
Mm-hmm.
Get
Go
some fresh
mushroom
air.
hunting, or not
Yep.
mushroom hunting if you don't like
Well,
mushrooms.
Fresh air, fresh air. We have a puppy. Get out and get away from the computer and your books and get some fresh
Yes.
air.
Okay, take care, everybody. See you next month. Bye.